Have you ever wondered what secrets lie hidden in abandoned places? What if I told you that a forgotten hospital, left to decay for decades, holds a mystery so chilling it will leave you questioning everything? In this video, we explore an abandoned hospital rumored to be haunted. But what we found inside was far more shocking than any ghost story. Stray dogs, trapped in the darkness, their eyes filled with fear and desperation. Who left them here? And why? Join us as we uncover the truth behind this eerie location, face the unknown, and attempt to rescue these innocent souls. But be warned, what we discovered will haunt you long after the video ends. If you're ready for an adventure that's equal parts heart-pounding and heartwarming, hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more thrilling explorations. Let's dive in. This intro is designed to grab attention, build suspense, and encourage viewer engagement. Let me know if you'd like further tweaks. The abandoned hospital stood at the edge of town, a crumbling relic of a bygone era. Its broken windows stared out like hollow eyes, and the overgrown vines clawed at its walls as if nature itself was trying to reclaim the building. For years, it had been a place of whispers and rumors, haunted, cursed, and forgotten. But for me and my team of urban explorers, it was the ultimate challenge. We had heard the stories, of course. The hospital had been shut down decades ago after a series of mysterious deaths. Some said it was due to malpractice, others whispered of experiments gone wrong. Whatever the truth, the building had been left to rot, a monument to tragedy. And now, armed with flashlights, cameras, and a sense of adventure, we were about to step inside. The sun was setting as we pulled up to the hospital, casting long shadows across the cracked parking lot. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. My friend Jake, the de facto leader of our group, turned off the engine and looked at us with a grin. "Ready to see what's inside?" he asked, his voice tinged with excitement. I nodded, though a part of me felt uneasy. There was something about this place that felt wrong. But I pushed the feeling aside. We had explored abandoned buildings before, factories, schools, even an old asylum, and we had always come out unscathed. This would be no different. The front doors were boarded up, but we found a side entrance that had been pried open, likely by other explorers. The hinges creaked as we pushed the door open, and a rush of cold air greeted us. The interior was dark, the only light coming from our flashlights as they swept across the room. The lobby was a mess. Chairs were overturned, papers scattered across the floor, and the reception desk was covered in a thick layer of dust. The walls were peeling, revealing patches of mold and rot. It was as if time had stopped the moment the hospital was abandoned. We moved cautiously, our footsteps echoing in the silence. The air was heavy with the smell of mildew and something else. Something metallic, like blood. I shook off the thought. It was probably just rust. We had been exploring for about an hour when we heard it. A low growl coming from somewhere deep within the hospital. We froze, our flashlights darting around the room. "Did you hear that?" whispered Sarah, our resident photographer. Before anyone could answer, the growl came again, louder this time. It was followed by the sound of paws scraping against the floor. My heart raced as I turned my flashlight toward the noise. There, in the shadows, were a pair of glowing eyes. Then another, and another. Slowly, a pack of dogs emerged from the darkness. They were thin, their fur matted and dirty, but their eyes were sharp and alert. They stared at us, their bodies tense, ready to attack. For a moment, no one moved. The dogs growled, their teeth bared, but they didn't advance. It was as if they were waiting for us to make the first move. "Don't run," Jake said quietly. "They'll chase us." I nodded. My eyes locked on the largest dog, a black and white mutt with a scar running down its side. It seemed to be the leader of the pack. Slowly, I crouched down, trying to make myself less threatening. "Hey there," I said softly, holding out my hand. "We're not here to hurt you." The dog tilted its head as if considering my words. Then, to my surprise, it took a step forward, sniffing the air. The other dogs followed suit, their growls fading into low whines. As the dogs relaxed, we began to notice something strange. Around the room were makeshift beds, old blankets and pillows arranged in a circle. There were also bowls of water and scraps of food, some of which looked fresh. "Someone's been taking care of them," Sarah said, her voice filled with awe. "But who? The hospital had been abandoned for years. Who would come here to feed these dogs? And why?" As we continued to explore, the atmosphere grew heavier. The dogs followed us, their presence both comforting and unnerving. Then, in one of the patient rooms, we found something that made our blood run cold. On the wall, written in what looked like blood, were the words, "They never left." Before we could process what it meant, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. Our breath came out in visible puffs, and the dogs began to whimper, their tails tucked between their legs. "Something's not right," Jake said, his voice trembling, and then we heard it. A faint whisper coming from the corner of the room. It was too soft to make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was a warning. Despite the growing sense of dread, we couldn't leave the dogs behind. They were clearly victims of this place, just like the spirits that haunted it. We decided to try and lead them out, but the dogs were hesitant. It was as if they were afraid to leave. The dogs' reluctance to leave the hospital was unsettling. They whined and paced, their eyes darting nervously toward the shadows. The black and white mutt, the apparent leader of the pack, stood closest to me, its ears twitching at every sound. It was clear that something, or someone, was keeping them here. "We can't just leave them," Sarah said, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "They're scared and they're starving. We have to try." Jake nodded, though his face was pale. "All right, but we need to be careful. If they bolt, we'll never find them in this maze." I knelt down again, holding out my hand to the scarred dog. "Come on, boy," I said softly. "You don't belong here. Let's get you out." The dog hesitated, its dark eyes searching mine. For a moment I thought it might trust me, but then a loud crash echoed from somewhere deeper in the hospital, and the pack scattered, disappearing into the shadows. "Damn it," Jake cursed, shining his flashlight down the hallway. "What was that?" "I don't know," I said, my heart pounding, "but we need to find those dogs." We followed the sound, our footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. The hospital seemed to grow darker the further we went, as if the building itself was resisting our intrusion. The air grew colder, and the smell of decay became overwhelming. As we turned a corner, we found ourselves in what appeared to be an old operating room. The equipment was rusted and broken, and the surgical table was stained with something dark and dried. On the walls were more cryptic messages, scrawled in the same red substance we had seen earlier. "They never left. Save them. Forgive us." Sarah snapped photos, her hands trembling slightly. "What the hell happened here?" she whispered. Before anyone could answer, we heard a low, mournful howl. It was coming from the end of the hallway. The dogs. We hurried toward the sound, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The hallway led to a set of double doors, their surfaces covered in peeling paint and rust. The howling grew louder as we approached, and I could feel my pulse quicken. "This is it," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever's going on, it's behind those doors." The doors creaked open with a loud groan, revealing a staircase leading down into the basement. The air was even colder here, and the smell was almost unbearable. The howling had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. "I don't like this," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "What if it's a trap?" "We don't have a choice," I replied, though I shared her fear. "We can't leave the dogs down there." We descended the stairs, our flashlights illuminating the damp, crumbling walls. The basement was a labyrinth of corridors and rooms, each one more decrepit than the last. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of our breathing and the occasional drip of water. Then we heard it. A soft whimper coming from one of the rooms. We followed the sound, our footsteps quickening. The door to the room was partially open, and as we pushed it open, we found the dogs huddled together in a corner. But they weren't alone. Standing in the shadows was a figure, a man, or what was left of one. His clothes were tattered and his skin was pale and gaunt. His eyes were hollow, and he stared at us with an expression of both sorrow and anger. The dogs whined, pressing themselves closer to the wall. The man raised a hand, pointing at us, and his lips moved, though no sound came out. "Who are you?" Jake demanded, his voice trembling. "What do you want?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, and the room seemed to grow darker. The temperature dropped even further, and I could see my breath in the air. "We need to go," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. "Now!" But before we could move, the man lunged at us, his mouth opening in a silent scream. The dogs barked and howled, their voices echoing in the small room. I stumbled backward, my flashlight falling to the floor and rolling away.